You probably clicked on this video because you want to know exactly what are the benefits of hiring an immigration attorney for your immigration process. In this video, I'm going to go over the major reasons why you would consider having an immigration attorney support you during your immigration journey. So make sure you stick around to find out exactly what those benefits are. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Before we get started, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Also, click that subscribe button so you can join the D'Angelo Law family as well. Now, I decided to make this video because I recently saw a Facebook post in an immigration support group basically asking what is the purpose of hiring an immigration attorney? Do they do anything other than collect the documents from the client and submit them to USCIS? What's the point of having an immigration attorney if all of the instructions are available on the website, all of the forms? Basically, there's a ton of information that you can find out on the internet, find out through YouTube. Why exactly is it necessary to hire an immigration attorney in the first place? First, I do want to point out that with respect to immigration, it is not required to be represented by an attorney. It is not required to have an attorney accompany you to your interview, for example. Any individual can apply for an immigration process by themselves. It is not required to have an attorney complete the forms for you and submit the application. But in this video, I'm going to go over why you should consider having an attorney represent you from start to finish in your immigration process. Now, I want to discuss a very important distinction that everyone should be aware of, and it gets confused very often. Now, there are attorneys, there are lawyers, there are paralegals and advocates that help prepare immigration forms. First, let's talk about attorneys. Attorneys are those that are licensed to practice law. So they graduated from law school, passed the bar exam, and are officially licensed in their respective states. Also, they are allowed to give legal advice based on the fact that they possess that law license. Lawyers are a little different. I know this can be confusing. Oftentimes, the term attorneys and lawyers are used interchangeably, but attorneys are lawyers, but lawyers are not attorneys. It's the same thing with a square is a rectangle is not a square. So a lawyer is someone who studied law, who graduated law school, but is not licensed to practice or is not practicing law. They do not hold a bar license. They did not pass their state bar exam, or they did not obtain an official license from their state bar. So they are not licensed to practice law. So you can be a lawyer because you graduated law school in the United States, for example, or you can be a lawyer because you graduated law school in another country, but you are not licensed to practice law in the United States. So be aware of this distinction. Attorneys are licensed to practice law and are legally allowed to give you legal advice, whereas lawyers are not. Okay, a lot of people will present themselves as lawyers, and many people will be confused and think that they are licensed to practice law when in fact they are not. They may be lawyers in their home country, or they graduated from law school in the United States, but they did not receive the official license to practice law. Paralegals also might have studied a specific field of law, an area of law, not necessarily graduated law school. So you can be a paralegal without even attending law school, but maybe you studied, you engaged in paralegal studies, or you've been working for several years for a law office. And paralegals also are not licensed to practice law. They do not have the license. They are not barred in a respective state. So once again, paralegals and lawyers are not attorneys and not licensed to practice law or to give legal advice. Also, there are advocates that help prepare immigration forms, but once again, not licensed to practice law, so therefore they're not attorneys. I bring this distinction up because it's very important to know who you're dealing with. Are you dealing with someone that is licensed to practice law, legally allowed to give you legal advice and represent you during your process, or is this person just helping you fill out the forms? right? So obviously you're going to see a substantial difference in the fees charged by an attorney versus a paralegal offering these services. So let's jump into the reasons why you might want to consider hiring an attorney to represent you during your immigration process. Immigration attorneys can explain to you certain options that you didn't know existed. For example, certain categories that you might be eligible for that you weren't aware of. They can give you strategic advice, directions, a sort of roadmap as to how to begin the process all the way until it is finished. Immigration attorneys know the different types of strategies that they could use in order for you to have a successful case. Next, immigration attorneys provide qualified experience. So typically they've done the process so many times, and a lot of the times it's for a client that's in a similar situation as you. So they already know how the process is going to be handled, exactly what documents should be submitted for someone in your specific situation. And because we have done the process so many times, we've already received feedback from USCIS. We already know what would prompt a request for evidence, how to answer that request for evidence, what documentation or what arguments are successful and what aren't. If you're doing this process for the very first time without an attorney, you have no insight as to how a USCIS officer might adjudicate your process, whether certain documents are acceptable. So an attorney would have more information on exactly what would be accepted. Next, and here's a big one, having an attorney complete the process for you substantially increases the chances of everything being done correctly. Now, I'm not going to guarantee that absolutely no mistakes will be made, because of course there's always that chance of human error, but definitely having an attorney complete your process would substantially increase the probability that everything is done correctly the first time. There is less chance that there will be mistakes on your forms. And in case you didn't know, USCIS can reject an entire form just because one box was left blank. They can reject your entire adjustment of status application if you forgot to include one form. For example, if you forgot to include the affidavit of support. Also, USCIS will reject a process if the filing fee is incorrect, if the check that was submitted is either incorrect or illegible, if you use the wrong edition of a form. Immigration processes are very time sensitive. So limiting the probability of mistakes is so important in order to avoid delays or even losing your opportunity to qualify or be eligible for a certain process. Make sure that you don't put at risk your status in the United States, your process. Some mistakes are irreversible. If USCIS believes that you committed fraud based on what you put on a form, you could be subject to a lifetime ban and never be allowed to return to the United States. Think about it like this. Let's say you're at home baking a cake and you make a mistake. You can't call a bakery and say, hey, my cake isn't rising. What do I do? Can you fix it? If you call a bakery after you've already baked your own cake at home, one, the baker's not gonna help you because you're baking it by yourself. And two, they can't help you in the middle of the process because you already made a mistake that substantially affected your cake. It hurt your entire process of baking that cake. So it's the same thing with immigration process. If you make a substantial mistake and then call an attorney in the middle of the process, they might not be able to fix it after the fact. So you do want to get that legal advice and legal support in the beginning. Some mistakes are irreversible and can completely keep you from ever coming to the United States. Next, attorneys have access to information and resources that are not readily available to the public. Attorneys know how to read the INA, the Immigration Nationality Act. We know the exceptions involved. We know the processing times. We know exactly how to read the visa bulletin. So although some of the information can be found online, there's a lot that can't. So as an attorney licensed to practice law, we do know exactly how to read the law and how to apply it to your process. The most important benefit of hiring an attorney is we save you time and stress. I see so many people freaking out, leaving numerous comments on YouTube videos, calling law offices, emailing in the middle of their process, and they're asking all of these questions. What should they do now? And I'm thinking, is this not something that the attorney is explaining to you, or do you not have an attorney at all? So a lot of that stress can be avoided if you have an attorney representing you during the process. For example, many people are unaware how to get a hold of someone at USCIS, how to get a hold of someone at the National Visa Center. People are having issues with the website, uploading their documents to the SEAC website. People are having issues getting in contact with somebody at the embassy. So a lot of you are finding yourselves stressed out in the middle of a process or in the middle of filling out a form. So many questions with respect to the affidavit of support, so many questions with respect to who is supposed to sign the I-944 Declaration of Self-Sufficiency, questions about which documents are accepted, if you just lost your job, what to do. The list goes on and on. If you had an attorney representing you, then a lot of that stress would be relieved, because all of these questions could potentially be answered by a simple phone call to your attorney. Also, the attorney should be uploading the documents for you and filling out the paperwork for you as well. Last thing I do want to point out is that immigration law is federal law. So an attorney can be licensed in any state and represent you during your process. So if you live in California, if you live in Texas, and your attorney is in Florida, for example, that's perfectly fine. It's federal law. Your attorney does not need to be in the same state as you. Obviously, if you're outside of the country, the attorney that's representing you does not need to be in your same country. It can be a US-based immigration attorney, which is probably who you should be having handling your paperwork anyway, since you're immigrating to the United States. So that's a huge benefit with respect to immigration law, is that you can have any attorney that is licensed in any state represent you. Also, with respect to immigration, the majority of attorneys charge flat fees for representation, which means there's no extra charge for communication, right? So you can email them as much as you want, you can call them as much as you want, and you won't get billed or invoiced for each conversation, for each phone call, for each email. So that's great with respect to the flat fees. So those are the benefits of having an attorney support you during your immigration process. I do acknowledge the fact that it is not required. You can definitely do the process by yourself, but it might cost you more in the long run. Also, you can't expect to do the entire process yourself and call an attorney asking for what to do next, what document you should submit. Some of us will be helpful and respond to your questions, but once again, you can't expect them to hold your hand during a process that you decided to take on by yourself. Keep that in mind when deciding how you're going to move forward with your immigration process. You want to avoid delays, you want to avoid mistakes, you want to be aware of all of the options that are available to you with respect to immigrating to the United States. So if you appreciated this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to make sure you're subscribed with your post notifications turned on so you can be notified the next time I have an update for you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.